So I got to figure out how to take this blur thing off. I'm trying to keep it real, y'all. Hey, Tuan,
Yeah.
Morning, gentlemen.
dude.
Good
So you're
morning.
in
Good
your
morning.
car because you are at work, or
No, I'm just sick of my family. I just,
hey, if you shop at Home Depot, this is a no-brainer. Our free BuildSOS program unlocks verified discounts, often up to 30%, plus access to exclusive deals on tools and materials. It is especially useful for contractors, handymen, and DIYers who buy regularly. No fees, no gimmicks, just better prices at checkout. All you have to do is click the link below or in the show notes that says Build SOS with Home Depot to start saving. Welcome to Disaster Diaries. I'm Evan Farmer. Today's guest and I go back to our fraternity days at Tulane University in New Orleans. Throw in Andy, and that's a trio of Tulane alums. Here's our conversation with my good friend Tuan, who lost his house in the Eaton Canyon fire in Altadena, California. You just went through one of the most challenging things I think people can go through because I know I've been there. Andy's been through it. So let's start from the beginning, man. Tell me about the day just before everything happened, and kind of walk us through what happened.
yeah. So the actually it probably started the day prior. During the time we were having 120-mile-an-hour winds, very reminiscent of New Orleans, being us Tulane alumni. Um, and so I was telling my wife, man, if we get any type of spark out here, we don't have a chance because these winds are crazy. Our palm trees were going 90 degrees. So the next day, I'm watching the news about the Palisades fire, which is across the city from us, and I get a call from a real estate agent who helped us buy the house, and she was like, "Are you guys okay?" And I'm not. I'm like, "Yeah, we're fine. Everything's normal." She goes, "Well, there's a fire at Eaton Canyon, which is about 2 miles, 3 miles from my house." And being the good southern transplant that I am, I built a nice deck in front of my yard. So I go out there, and on this deck, I can see what it's an orange glow, and it looked like the sun was setting. And I told my wife, I was like, we have half an hour if that thing flips, because at the time the wind was going southeast, we're a little southwest of the area, and I was like, if that wind flips, we're toast. And in my mind, at that point, all I could think about was the Paradise Fires, which happened in California, and it happened also on a mountainside, but it was a smaller community, one road in, one road out, and there's actual footage of people like burning alive in their cars, people running down the streets and dying
I
on the way
remember.
down. And I was like, I'm not that's not happening to my family. So we called the sheriff's department. There was no official notification, and as a family, we're like, we're just gonna leave. That's about 8:45, probably about 45 minutes after my phone call with my real estate agent. We're heading down the road, and you could just see what essentially was like lava flow of burn area. And from that day, we didn't come back to the property for 6 weeks.
In that moment, though, were you talking to your wife and also to your kids about, hey, why don't you go grab some things, right? I mean, where do you have that balance between I'm not going to freak you out and tell you to grab everything important and put it in the car in 5 minutes, but at the same time, was that running through your mind of like, let's grab some of the important things?
I treated it as if it was right across the street. We
The
just
fire.
moved into the we just moved into the house, so all of our important stuff was in a central area. It's not like we could have just walked over there. I mean, looking back, we could have packed our like 3 cars and then had as much of our stuff as possible. But that's with the ability to look back. At the moment, I was just thinking we're all gonna roast. So I can have a conversation with people about, my wife's Louis Vuitton bags. I can't have a conversation about, hey, you know, all three of my family members died because I wanted to get, my golf bag out. So there was none of that. After the fire, one of my kid's friends um, sent him a uplifting message. And it was like literally right after the fire, and it was like, from the ashes you shall rise. And we're like, yeah, that's probably like a little too soon. But
Yeah.
uh,
What was it like when the moment you realized, oh, my house is actually gone or probably going to be gone?
well, okay, so the next morning we drove. We left the hotel and we decided we're going to go to my sister-in-law who lives like 2 hours away in Palm Springs, Palm Desert area. And we figured there's gonna be a mess up there anyway, so we didn't want to come back in terms of like. But we were just thinking smoke and things like that. We weren't thinking our house was gonna burn out. But then my wife got a video. I got a call from an old neighbor who's a plumber, and he was sent up here to turn off a lot of gas lines. And so he was like, "Hey, do you want me to record? Do you want me to go up to your house?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure." So he recorded it. When he sent it to us, um, my first initial, you know, thought was, "Where is he?" Because I couldn't locate he was just driving around, everything was gone, and so I
Hmm.
didn't like. I'm like, "Where is he?" And then he turned, then you see him turning, and then he turned down my street, and down my street, like the first house was this really nice house that had just been built, and it had this beautiful driveway with fresh lawn, and I saw that, and I turned off the video. I didn't even wait to see like the very ending because I knew there was nothing there. I knew there was nothing there for miles, not like, on my block. I saw that house. I was like, there's nothing there for blocks and blocks and blocks. I don't want to even look at it. I didn't actually see the physical property until 6 weeks after the fire because we were like, there's nothing to see. If there's things left, I don't even want to like sift through it because I just like, maybe I didn't want to be reminded of it. I didn't want to like, it was like a futile process. What am I sifting through? Just dust and ashes to hopefully find, a stupid ring or something. We
Right.
we just forego the whole process, and so we didn't come back for 6 weeks.
Was there a difference with, I mean, there's you and how you handle it, and then there's your family, right? So, did you find yourself in a position where you were trying to have like meaning making for your kids or a different perspective than your wife or
All my wife wanted was a hug. All she wanted me to do was just hold her and kind of um, let her process. You know. So, but on the other hand, my going into rebuild mode was my process. My son went deep into his guitar, so I don't know if that was his processing. We've never really discussed it as a family because we've all been in life mode. Life goes on, right? We still have bills. People still expect you to go to work. Um,
I think it's pretty awesome that you recognize that as a family, that everybody's got their own thing, and it sounds like you guys kind of respected each other's process as well, which is something that I think everybody gets. It gets overlooked. Is that whole you got to do it your way.
Absolutely, and it just doesn't apply to my family, and it applies to everybody that I know that is dealing with this. I'm trying to apply as much grace to people's how they're reacting to all of this, um, because like I'm on all these social media sites, and a lot of it is for information, a lot of it is for support, and you get a lot of just I want to say energies that are very negative, that aren't very good for the process. But I try to be very empathetic because I don't know what exactly they are dealing with, you know. I don't know if their insurance is paid out. I don't know their grief.
What are those communities like? What are people talking about now, 9 months in?
You can hear the frustrations. I'm not getting this from my insurance company. You know, the cost of this is out of control. You know, all of these things that are are prohibitive uh, feelings that would allow you to rebuild. These things are holding people back, is because everybody is in a different financial situation. That starts off everything, and so with that, then you can deal with how emotional it gets.
Sometimes it's easy for people skimming the headlines to kind of shrug if they're not there and say, well, these are probably people's second houses or they're wealthy anyhow, or, I'm sure they're going to be fine because if they're living there, they're fine. And obviously that's not the case, right? Everybody's in their own unique situation.
In my community, Alternate community, there's a lot of retirees. It's an older community. Uh, um, it was one of those communities that allowed for financing for minorities. So back in the 50s and whatnot. So it's a strong bedrock of minority home wealth. I mean home ownership. And so it's a very big deal. But it's an older community, and so we need to rebuild. And so we need to be supportive of each other, not trying to tear each other down again. But you're right. That's part of the. I think that's part of the concern with people in California and the way the rest of America looks at us in terms of they think, oh, these are all $1 million homes. No, they're not. These are just middle class, lower middle class folks.
Can you share? Because I think a lot of people would be curious to know, especially if they've just gone through disaster. What is it that you did beforehand? Like, what was your thought process before to put you in that position? And now that you are reaping the benefits of it, what advice could you give about how to position yourself well for that?
Everybody needs to revisit their home insurance policy. If you bought your house longer than 4 years ago, 5 years ago, everybody needs to revisit. The price to rebuild the house in 1985 is not the same as 2025. So you're insured, but what happens is when the house burns down, you were insured for 180 grand. It cost 950 grand to build. Now you're in that group of people who, unlike me, um, are stressed. They don't know where to start and all that stuff. So that would be a first. How your insurance payout happened is probably the most critical aspect of how you are dealing with this disaster. Everybody I know that is in my situation, you would think it never happened. I mean, like, people talk to me all the time. They're like, I would never know you lost your house, man. You seem normal. You're just your normal self. I'm like, 'cause I'm not worried. I'm literally not worried. I'm so squared away. People can't even make their first step.
As you work with your contractor, how's that been? And have there been moments where you've had to pull out that knowledge and say, kind of course correct a little bit and say, well, actually, I do know a little bit about this. I mean, how's it been going with? Maybe you just found somebody really good.
I will tell people things that will make them know that I know certain things, just so that uh, when you send me your estimate, make it your best estimate.
You were saying there are people who don't even know, they haven't even made the first call to the insurance. Like they're so paralyzed with, I don't know what to do, right? Is that still the case? I mean, there's still people out there who just need this guidance of what is the first step?
The only reason why people aren't rebuilding just yet is because, once again, it starts with finances, and then after that is knowing what you need to do and what you really don't need to do. And I'll give you a good example of that. My house, we already had a floor plan drawn from my recent remodel. So I used a designer to draw up my entire new floor plan. That designer cost me $3,500. His engineer cost me $5,400. So between my designer, my engineer, my architect plans cost me less than 10 grand. And then you get these people on the forums. They're like, oh yeah, they're talking about 8 to 15% of the project. So that we're the project cost. So we're getting like 65,000, 80,000 in architect fees and 17,000 in engineering fees, and so now we're off 100 grand off the bat. If you pulled up a floor plan online that mimicked or kind of what you wanted, and you gave it to a designer, they throw in the CAD machine and everything pops up for them. So you're saying I paid $3,500 for something that somebody, my project is, let's say my project on a norm would cost 800 grand. So then we do the math. 10% of 800 grand is 80,000.
Yeah. And
Like that kind of stuff is heartbreaking to me.
what is needed? What is not out there right now? What do the people in this group need to just for help? How do we help them move forward? Like, what if you could snap your fingers? What technology would exist?
Anything that will help people through the initial. It's always the initial, because you're in pain, there's trauma. You just want somebody to go, here, this is what you do. Don't make me
Yeah, baby
think, don't make me
steps.
search, don't make me look. Just put me in front of this group, and they're going to kind of walk me, hand holding me through this initial process. Nobody fills you in on that first part. Nobody tells you, oh, if you're homeless, this is who you need to reach out to. Nobody says that to you.
Have you actually gone out and like helped a neighbor kind of, negotiate or talk to a contractor or talk somebody out of, a 6-ton unit that should only be a 4-ton, that kind of thing yet?
Anybody I know that I talk to, that I touch on a daily basis that has anything to do with the fires, I ramble. And it's uninvited. I just start spewing out of the mouth, and hopefully you'll catch something that will save you a ton of money. Nobody's telling them that, when you interview a GC, is he going to put $150,000 site manager on the bill? It's like, what is the GC for? Isn't that your job as to be the site manager?
What's the easiest first step?
I think if there's a central resource where you can get some of those things, that would be a good start. They set up a one-stop shop for Altadena fire victims, and that they did the same for the Palisades. And so, and in Altadena One Stop, they've taken every department that you go through, the whole permitting process. Every department sits there, and so all in one place, you have all your answers, and it has been a godsend. So for Altadena, we have an office. For Palisades, they have an office, and in the office, you have your fire department, you have your building and safety, you have your planning, you have Southern California Edison, you have FEMA, you have all these people that you're going to have to talk to, right? And they're all there, and so it's one of those things where, like, you see it. I'm sitting there waiting, and then you hear these people ask these questions, and in the wrong department, and all they do is they shift the person down there, and then next you know, somebody walks out of a little corridor, and they answer their questions, and it's a relief, right? Because when I'm dialing on the phone and I'm looking to find out an answer, and I'm feeling trauma, and then I get this, dial 1 for this group, and then you dialed 7 times and you can't get to that group, and 45 minutes later you don't have that one little question answered. And now you're thinking, if I have to do this with every question I have, I am going to jump off a bridge. If it takes me 40 minutes for every question, I'm going to have a lot. Because I have no idea about this process. I don't know where to start, where it ends, how we get into our house, how we get Southern California to get us electricity because everything's burned. I don't know any of that. So I'm going to have a lot of questions. But if it's going to take me 40 minutes, I'm not going to do it. This fire in Los Angeles specifically, right, will be a model for the rest of the world on how to manage a disaster of this large. The U.S. Corps of Armed Engineers came in here and cleaned this place like it was a well-oiled military fighting machine. They rolled in, no questions asked, picked up stuff, dumped stuff, moved. It was like ants, right? And everybody is doing the same from top to bottom.
I think more and more we're realizing in this world, in the United States and lots of places right now, that everybody's kind of got to figure it out on their own more, and the government's not going to be there. It's going to be there less and less, I think, is the trend. A lot of these programs, and so you really have to lean on the private sector and your social network, which is so critical, unfortunately.
Yeah, we haven't felt like we lent on the federal government in that respect. We need people to be able to just help people, which literally just the first couple steps is so critical to allow them to kind of get out of take their own training wheels off and go, okay, I can handle the rest of the process. Because once you start getting into, you go, now it's just a matter of doing, because it's not nothing left to think about. It's just doing. That would be so critical.
Well, that's exactly what Disaster Diaries is doing, and that's exactly what you're doing, because you're telling your story, you're talking about, how you recover and how you go, take those first steps. And man, I love the fact that you're such an outspoken advocate. We're going to have you back, for sure, as the process
Absolutely.
goes on. But all right, I want to ask you a question to kind of wrap this up, which we ask everybody at the end of the podcast. Um, what would you tell somebody who just found out they lost their house 5 minutes ago?
This is what I tell you. Have an amazing amount of grace for the people you're going to come into contact with, your family, and yourself, with all of what you're about to go through in the next whatever, because it's going to be crazy. But if you can have a little bit of empathy and grace to recognize that everybody is going through it too, in their own ways, that we should be rowing in the same boat. And it will challenge the process if, we're fighting each other along the way.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for muddling through this with us. So good luck with everything. Give the family a
Thanks,
hug,
guys.
and we'll catch you on the rebound.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Good to see you,
Tuan.
man. If you want the full, uncut conversation with today's guest, including a lot more insights, you can find it on the Disaster Diaries podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Hey there, just a reminder that this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not legal, financial, or insurance advice. Disaster Diaries and BuildSOS do not endorse any specific products, services, methods, or guest viewpoints discussed here. So, please always consult qualified professionals for decisions related to disaster preparedness, construction, or insurance.